I grew up in Sherrill in the 60s and the 70s. Back then it was your classic small American town, a city actually, with a couple of stoplights, sidewalks along every street, and one big employer. It seemed like everybody worked for United Silversmiths. My dad worked there, my grandparents, aunts and uncles, neighbors, and family friends. I even worked there during several college breaks, wandering through the factory 8 hours a day, recording the whereabouts of each piece of equipment I came across, including the 2-ton drop hammers used to pound the raw steel into forks, knives, and spoons. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it paid a lot better than McDonald's. It was at my sister's wedding some years ago, held at a large hall at a stately old mansion, that I became interested in the history behind United Silversmiths. It turns out that building was constructed 100 years before I was born by a small band of people who called themselves the United Community. I discovered that day that they were the ones who started the Civil War business shortly after the Civil War, a corporation that today records sales of nearly $1 billion a year.
For almost 2 centuries, city residents, descendants, scholars, clergymen, and the just plain curious have leafed through the pages of the United Community history, touring the mansion they once lived in, and reading the weekly newspapers they distributed detailing their beliefs. There was a biblical foundation underneath it all, but most would agree they were a paradox. Business savvy and hard-working, loyal to family and friends, and stout believers in knowledge and higher education, their most noted claim to fame, or infamy, depending on your point of view, was their practice of free love. The community, as they called themselves, lived in the mansion house, a grand mansion nestled on a hill on the edge of town, where everyone was considered married to everyone else. The several hundred adult men and women could share sexual relations with any number of other members, subject, that is, to the approval of the founder and a handful of trustees. Random, blind, passion-driven pairings were not encouraged. Rather, a more scientific approach prevailed to control not only conception during impoverished times, but also the characteristics of any deliberate children. The surprising thing was, the women had a voice in these decisions, along with choices on which work activity to participate in, and whether or not to put their children, if they had any, into the community daycare. Remember, this was the 19th century. Women wouldn't be granted the right to vote for another 60 years. But in the community, many of the female members cut their hair short, wore pants, and occasionally selected younger male members for late evening get-togethers. I can't say it was ideal equal rights, but it held a close resemblance.
In writing this novel, I wanted to create an entertaining and fun way to learn about these people, without getting bogged down in a history lesson. I wanted modern-day characters reacting with shock and fascination, just as I had as I discovered the community and their many controversial beliefs. And I thought it'd be interesting to recreate in the 21st century some of the same attitudes and prejudices the community faced in the 1800s. Condemnation from the local clergy, and a mix of support and outrage from the neighboring citizenry. The result was The Good Silver, a current-day murder mystery that takes place at the Mansion House, the home built and occupied by the United Community that is today a National Historical Landmark.